You're listening to Bigger Than Belief, real stories about real faith with real people whose belief is unbelievable. I'm your host, Adam Duxter. Welcome to Bigger Than Belief. Today is Thursday, December 25th. And for many people watching and listening, that means today is Christmas Day. We recognize that can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. But today I wanted to take a look at one of the largest Christmas celebrations happening across the Twin Cities and happening across all of Minnesota. That is at Eagle Brook Church. It's a name maybe you've heard of before. They've got 14 campuses across the Twin Cities in the entire metro and, of course, all of greater Minnesota. And today they say between those campuses and online, they'll host more than 100,000 people for their Christmas services. 100,000 people. And it got me wondering, how do you craft a message that is relevant to 100,000 different people? And also, how do you approach a conversation around Christmas, especially after the year that we just had and are currently still having, so heavy for so many people? In today's episode, we welcome on John Alexander. He's one of Eagle Brook's teaching pastors. He's also someone who helped craft the message that is going to be shared at all of the Eagle Brook locations this Christmas holiday. And John has a fascinating background, and it's a really cool conversation. One I'm hoping is relevant regardless of if you celebrate Christmas or you have no clue of what today is all about. I don't want to waste any time. Here is John Alexander. We now welcome on a very special guest, John Alexander from Eagle Brook Church. He's the executive director of creative arts. He's also one of the teaching pastors on the team. And John, I can't imagine how busy these next few days are. I mean, we're taping this a week exactly before Christmas.
Yeah.
Thank you for making time. I mean, how much of a slam is the lead up to Christmas for what you do?
Oh, that's a great question. Great way to start things off. It is a slam. I mean, I've been in a busy stretch. Our teams are in a busy stretch. There's so much planning and coordinating and working to ensure that we're doing the very best we can to put on the best experience possible so that people can encounter Jesus through our Christmas experience. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how busy? 10. It is a busy stretch. And this, there's going to be a lot of services that happen. Yep, we're recording a week before. A lot of services that are about to happen. We are right smack dab in the very beginning of about to start those services. But really the lead up is what's the most busy part of it. Once you're in hey, service time has started, people are coming. Now at that point, we're just in go mode and prayer mode and hoping beyond hope that people are encountering Jesus through the experience that we planned for a long time. But right now, currently, I'm 10 out of 10 busy, but also really grateful to be here because of how important, how much I believe in the message of Jesus specifically in this season of time.
You talk about the lead up and the logistics. When you work for a church, especially one like Eagle Brook, how early in advance do you have to thinking about Christmas and the Christmas holiday?
That is a great question. To give you a little picture, we're already thinking about Easter. So Easter is in 3, 4, let's see, January, February, March, April. Yeah, 4 months, right? April. And we're already starting to think about Easter. Now, we haven't done anything with it, but we are starting to think about when our services will be, who's going to help plan the experience, how we start preparing for that experience. So it's about 3 to 4 months in advance. We start thinking about it. And then teams really start working on the Christmas experience about 6 weeks before, when they're thinking about what kind of music are we going to do? What kind of things are we going to do for people who are visiting for the very first time? What's the message going to be about? Because you have to get that far ahead just in order to print the materials that we need to print and create the content on the screens that we want to create. And so there's a team of people who are working about 3 or 4 months ahead, but then we start dialing in about 6 weeks before.
Is there a conversation back and forth of how do we plan enough in advance, but then also stay nimble enough to make sure, this message isn't dated by the time it gets to the Christmas day?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, first of all, senior pastors, not just our senior pastor, but senior pastors across church land will joke about this. The Christmas message is really the same message every other year or every year. Now you can make some nuances and changes to it, but the Christmas message is about the birth of Jesus. The Easter message doesn't change either. It's about the death and resurrection of Jesus. And so there's only so many changes that you can make to the message. You know, it is the same old story told over and over. In fact, part of our attempt to inspire people to check out church is that we want that quote unquote same old story, because even if people don't regularly go to church, they have some awareness of why we're celebrating Christmas. They know it revolves around the birth of Jesus. And so they have heard bits and pieces of the story, and we want to frame up that story in a fresh and unique way. So to answer your question, yes, of course, there's a balance of how far in advance you plan, you know, how much you really lock in as opposed to adjusting as you get closer. But at the end of the day, we're preaching on the same old gospel story that's been around for 2,000 years. You know, the birth of Jesus, what happened when he came into this world, the type of world that he entered, and what his life really meant for people now, not just in the first century, but now in the 21st century. So
when you're getting ready and prepping for this message, are you reminded of the message? Because I think what you just said is so fascinating, where so many people, even if you're a Christian or not, or if you go to church or not, you know the story. And so I'm curious with when you're planning, are you refreshing? Are you thinking about this story, or what is kind of hitting you when you're kind of looking through and saying, how are we going to tell this?
Yeah, that is something that is really important to me. That's a good question too, because I've been in ministry in some shape, form, or fashion for, I could argue, 25 years. I'm 42 years old. So after college is when I professionally went into ministry, but even during college, before college, I was in some type of ministry. And the thing that's always been really important to me is that first and foremost, I want the message of Jesus to personally affect me. And I know that sounds self-centered, but that's not what I mean. What I mean is I want to live it out before I shape it and talk about it. It's that whole integrity idea. When I stand up in front of people, when I preach a message, when I help craft an experience, what is most important to me is that I can authentically say to you, to someone else, hey, I'm doing the very best I can to live out this message, to allow it to shape me in a fresh, new, and profound way. That is really important to me. That doesn't mean that my faith is perfect, by the way. It's not, trust me. But I want to be as authentic as possible and say, I've been through a season of doubt, discouragement, struggle, but I'm still doing the very best I can to allow this message to shape me personally. So thankfully, in the 25 years of ministry, I've allowed that to happen. And my prayers for the next, 20, 25 years of ministry, God willing, what I have left, that I'm allowing that message of Jesus to personally impact my life in ways that are fresh for people to see in my own experience.
So when you think about the Christmas message, how does that impact you?
Oh, so many ways. Where do I begin? I mean, I think about, think of Jesus at the different stages of his physical life on earth, his embodied life. He was born into a very chaotic world. Nothing about his birth was peaceful or stable. I know we often picture a sweet little baby Jesus wrapped in swaddling cloths, lying in this gentle manger. But the truth is, at the time, he was born into quite a chaotic experience. Mangers are certainly not comfortable where he was born. The fact that his parents were trying to convince people that it was this miraculous virgin birth that probably a significant amount of people did not believe at the time. Of course, if you know the Bible story at all, when Jesus was born, King Herod heard about this so-called king that was born, and so he ordered infants across this region to be murdered, or toddlers, babies under the age of 2, looking to try to take out Jesus' life. They fled to Bethlehem. You know the story. So he's born into this chaotic experience, and yet in this birth, somehow what we experience 2,000 years later, I personally do, I know many people who do, we experience this promise of peace, like that somehow his birth, his embodiment of God in the flesh, was going to allow humans, now think about this, 2,000 years later, to supernaturally experience peace and stability and hope in the midst of struggle and chaos and times of despair. How does that happen? I mean, a variety of ways. One is just looking to the life of Jesus, how he lived, how his disciples lived, what his word says. But there's also a supernatural thing. Whether you believe in the supernatural Holy Spirit experience or not, there's something that happens when we accept Jesus into our life. We look to him, we do our best to follow him, and supernaturally somehow, and I can speak to this, that somehow even in the midst of those really chaotic, trying times, we experience a groundedness, a peace that surpasses all understanding, an experience that goes beyond even just what's happening in our circumstances. So that's just one way. I mean, I know I threw out a ton of words there, but I think about that sense of peace, and when the world feels like it's in turmoil or there's something happening in our lives that feels like beyond our ability to happen, somehow, some way, through, again, 42 years of my life, I've experienced a centering, a peace that I can only attribute to Jesus and my relationship with him.
Do you find it relevant to people who are coming in and hearing that message in the year 2025?
Man, I just thought of this morning because I just recently, our church, and it was through my message, but it was planned by our senior pastor and others. I gave a message on the practice of Sabbath. Sabbath is been around historically through the Jewish people for thousands of years, and Jesus kind of reframed it. The Sabbath, just short, as a 1 day a week break just from work and enjoying God's creation. And I won't get it too much into that, but I just was kind of scrolling through Instagram, saw that Dax Shepard on his Armchair Expert podcast had a guest on talking about the Sabbath. And what I'm sensing more and more, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I'd love to hear from people, but I'm sensing more and more that Jesus is as appealing and relevant as ever. Now, I'm not saying all the aspects of the Christian faith. You and I both know there are some things that are, I would argue, misrepresented about Jesus in the world or on social media or in different spaces. But Jesus himself, if you just really study and look to the life of Jesus when he was here on earth and what he meant to people, and you read through the Gospels and the book of Acts, which is the one following the Gospels, the story of the early church, I am sensing in the world that culturally people are as open to Jesus as ever.
Why do you think that is?
Oh man, I think he's let's start off. Number one, I think he's the greatest human being to ever live. Now, we believe both he was fully God, fully human. That's hard to get your minds around. How can you be fully God, fully human? But as a human being, the way he treated other people, the way he raised the dignity of people who were considered lower class, women, children, people of other ethnicities, he always sought to raise the value of other people. He was compassionate and kind. He didn't seem to be in a hurry, yet was really, quote unquote, successful. He achieved, he built this following. I mean, he had all these perfect embodied things that at our core, human beings want to become. At our core, I think people do want that sense of peace, that sense of groundedness, that peace, again, that I talked about, that surpasses all understanding. I think Jesus embodied those things. And so I think when people are getting opinions and influence from all types of people, and there's a lot of, we could go down the list. There's a lot of great people who are alive right now that we're just, oh man, I can't believe that person exists in my lifetime. What a brilliant thinker and person and humanitarian. But Jesus transcends all of that. So I think as we get into this phase of influencers and all the experts out there who are claiming their way is the best way, time and time again, I think what you find is that Jesus' way is better than that. Now, I know I'm biased. I do understand that. But I think objectively, when you start to look through some of these different people and compare him to like the person of Jesus, I think he's just greater and better than all of those things. So yeah, that's one thought to that.
It's interesting to even hear you say that at the end, though. Like, I know I'm biased, because as you're saying that, I'm thinking about our listeners saying, of course this guy
Yeah,
thinks
of course,
that,
yeah.
right?
Pastor, he's a
that's
Christian.
literally his job to think that in many ways. But what I think is interesting is, Eagle Brook, for people who aren't familiar listening to who Eagle Brook is or what y'all do. I mean, more than a dozen locations across the Twin Cities.
Yep.
And this Christmas message, I know you mentioned over a few days, you all anticipate over 100,000 people will engage with this either in person or online. And what I think is fascinating is out of those 100,000 people, you'll probably have a wide spectrum of where people are walking in at that point in time. How do you craft a message that will be heard or engaged with by over 100,000 people that will simultaneously be relevant to that entire spectrum?
Yeah. Well, you're causing me to feel a lot of stress right now because that's what we feel stress about. We do. I feel the weight of that. Our senior pastor feels the weight of that. That's a weighty thought and question, and one that keeps us up at night. In fact, just to give you a little glimmer into my week, I woke up a couple of mornings ago really thinking about, are we really hitting the mark for all of those people? And it is so difficult in a span of 60 minutes, that's about what our Christmas experience is, to really try to hit all groups of people. But let me just take you through how we think about the different groups. We know and we expect and we hope and we pray for people who are walking through our doors or checking things out online who do not have faith in God at all. No faith, no understanding, no knowledge of the Bible. I do think most Americans have some awareness of why we celebrate Christmas, but even then, for like our youngest, kids and people who are coming through, we understand that some of them really don't know much at all. I thought it was Santa Claus and gifts and fun. Oh, Jesus born. Oh, okay, why are we? So we do start with that in mind. Acts 15:19 from the Bible says, we should not make it difficult for Gentiles who are turning to God. Now, what that means, just really quickly, are people who don't know God. They don't have faith. And the early church was talking about how they don't want to make it difficult for people who are outside the faith to turn to God. So we're doing everything we can to break down walls, to break down barriers so that people can encounter Jesus. By the way, we don't care about the name Eagle Brook Church. We want all churches to thrive and do well. At the end of the day, we want people to encounter Jesus. So we have that in mind. So how do we create experience like that? It matters of when someone walks into a church and they're a little scared or intimidated or wondering if God's going to smack them down or some pastor's going to call them out, which we aren't going to do and God does not do. But we want to create a warm experience. So people come into our, buildings and there's a volunteer there who's smiling saying, welcome. How can I help you? I'm so glad you're here. Some of our places have coffee shops and places to sit that just feel like a warm caribou type of experience. And why do we do that? We don't care about making, there's no money in that. There's no of course that's not why we're doing it. We're trying to create an experience for someone to feel, I feel comfortable. I can get a hot chocolate or a black cup of coffee and people are nice. They're friendly. The building's warm. So it starts there. And then at the very beginning of the experience, we do want to have those people in mind. So we want to create a shared experience where you can relate to gifts, mentions of gifts and a Christmas carol that you've heard before on the radio. And you can connect with that. And someone's going to welcome you and say, gosh, we were expecting you. We're so glad you're here. You don't have to do anything. We don't expect anything from you. Even if we offer chance to people to give financially, which a lot of churches, places do, we always will say, if you're joining us or just checking things out, please, you should feel zero pressure to give. This is for those who want to be sacrificial and charitable at this time of year. And so we have those people in mind. So that's that first group. The second group are people who have grown up in church and who do want to show up at Christmas to have a meaningful experience. Throughout the entire experience, we will teach through the deeper meaning of Christmas, why the virgin birth matters, why the birth of Jesus impacts our lives here and now, what even if, longtime followers of Jesus are experiencing this season of hopelessness, why you can find a renewed sense of hope. And we will speak to those people, and our prayer and hopes by the end that both the longtime believer and the person who has never been to church before would have a shared, meaningful experience. Now, if you're someone who comes in a skeptic and you don't believe, well, now you've been presented what we call the gospel, the good news of Jesus, why Jesus' birth, life, death, and resurrection matters, and how you can have that saving faith relationship with Jesus. But if someone chooses not to, great, we're so glad you came. And we oftentimes say, come back, the next time we have church, because we're starting a series of messages on, and we'll lay out some reason why they should come back. And we'll often say to them, hey, you may not have put your faith in Christ now. That's okay. Come back next week, because we're talking about, fill in the blank, whatever we're talking about. Because we want to create what we say is to kind of put a carrot in front of them, a reason why they should come back. But it's always reminding them, but you still don't have to put your faith in Jesus. We want you to just be here. We want you to take it in, and we want to present the truth so that people have an opportunity to make that decision themselves.
That seems like you just described the entire spectrum.
Oh, I know. That's why it keeps me up at night. I know. That's what makes what we're trying to do, and a lot of churches are trying to do, so difficult, because you do want to speak. Now, some churches, I will say, maybe don't have the unchurched person in mind as much. There's a theological friendly disagreement over what the church gathering is for. Some people do believe theologically that the church gathering is meant to be for believers. So if you're an unbeliever there, you're just drawn to the truth that everyone's celebrating. There's another side, churches like us, that believe the church gathering should be for both non-believers and believers. And our hope is to draw those non-believers into that, that faith in Christ. And they've had an experience. They still feel welcome. They can be there, of course. They don't have to sign up for whatever, thing that we say to sign up for. We just want them there so that they have the opportunity to encounter Jesus. And then we're going to challenge them with the truth so that they hopefully do make that decision to follow Jesus.
A couple of the words you talked about just over our conversation here, just hope or, peace in a chaotic world.
Yeah.
I think for specifically people living in the Twin Cities or just the greater metro area, this year feels different than other years. Mm-hmm. It's been insanely heavy. Mm. We saw lawmakers, killed. We saw a shooting at a place of worship. Mm. Even right now, I report the news when I'm not doing this, right? People who watch might have every reason to say there is very little hope right now. Do you feel that? And do you take that into account specifically for this year, that people might be walking in maybe with a little bit different feeling than years past?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. It breaks my heart to even think about what has happened the last year, looking back even over let's just go back a little, the last 6 years, it's been a tough decade. It's been a tough decade for the country. It's been a tough decade for, Minnesota. I mean that, starting in 2020. And, I think as I've lived some life, not a complete life, but, middle age, I do realize that we have a couple of choices that we can make when it comes to our view of the future. We either can live with a sense of hopelessness and despair because, frankly, we have every right to live that way. There's been a lot of tough things, whether it's been just shared experiences or personally for people. Or we can choose to live with a sense of optimism and hope and a sense that we have an opportunity as human beings to help create that shared better future together. So oftentimes Jesus' message is presented as, if you believe in Jesus, you got to put your faith in him so that you can go to heaven when you die. That's a part of the message. It's not the complete message of Jesus. And that's oftentimes where a lot of Christians fall short. We just present it as, hey, make sure you scan your ticket to heaven. Really, the birth of Jesus and the fact that he was called the Christ, the Messiah, the Anointed One, means that he came to this earth to inaugurate a new way of living, a new kingdom. And so my belief is that when you put your faith in Jesus, we certainly get to experience salvation and eternity with Jesus, with God someday. But the greater message, in my opinion, is now as human beings, we get to, work together with God's Spirit, with Jesus, to create a better future together. And maybe I'm naive. I'm willing to say, yeah, maybe I'm just a guy who's living in, this sense of like, well, okay, you don't really know my experience, John. Someone saying to me, you don't know what I've been through. And I don't. I really don't. I know a lot of people have been through some really tough stuff. And yet, even then, the message of Jesus means that somehow, some way, we get to partner together with the God of the universe to co-labor together to create a better future. So to me, there's hope in that because we have God working with us to somehow create a better experience. Now, how can we do that? You might be like, what could I possibly do? I mean, in the world with all the things that happen, and those are terrible things, and I feel it deeply. I hope that I have a sense of empathy. I do feel like I do, but you don't often want to say too much about that because then you're the person that's like, well, you don't know exactly how I feel. But I do feel that for people, and what I would say to them is that you still can be a part of creating a better future. How? It's not always the big things. It's by the way I treat the person serving me coffee this morning. It's the way that I write a note to a teacher who's been really meaningful to my child. It's the way that I go about my day treating my own kids or my spouse. Together, somehow we're just creating a little slice of a better future together, even in the midst of all of the things that are happening. You and I can partner with God to bring some hope to the world. And I know that feels like you're just making a small dent. Yeah, but if a bunch of people are making those small dents and bringing hope to the world, think of what could happen. And so that's why I do what I do, is because I do think human beings have that capacity to bring these incredible moments of hope for people. So,
and I'm sure there's a moment in what you initially described as the 10 out of 10, chaos of this time of year, where that does kind of come back and hit you, that remembering and that realization.
That I get a chance to create the future. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That's why I'm so passionate about this message, that, just in the little slices that we've been given to oversee in this world. And there are some people listening or watching that are, have more than a little slice. They oversee a team of 20 and those 20 have potential to impact, 20 more people, or a team of 1,000, or businesses or organizations or churches. And if all of those people believe that they can create a better future and bring some hope to people by working with Jesus in that, think of the impact that we can make. So,
and I know we've probably hit on it at this point, but this does air on Christmas Day. So people will have heard the message that Eagle Brook has.
Yeah.
What is going to be like the main thing that you all do tell people? What is this message going to be that you want these people to hear?
Well, it's not to be repetitive, but it's that Jesus' birth and life matters. It matters. And so we pare it down to some of the most simple terms and simplistic ways of looking at Jesus, because we want those non-believers who don't know anything about to understand the message of Jesus. So at the end of the day, what we want is that for someone to know that if they give Jesus a chance, if they confess with their mouth and say, believe in their heart that God raised Jesus from the dead, there's some understanding of what Jesus accomplished in this life and on the cross, that through God's Spirit, he can start to transform us from the inside. So we're going to share a story of someone who attended or attends our church and has been a part of our church, and he went through a literal heart transplant. And what we want to draw out is that this young man's faith was extraordinary through this really chaotic, stressful, trying time. Because when you're on the donor list to receive a new heart, that's about as despairing as you're going to feel in this life, I can imagine. There's a lot of things, but you're wondering if this son of yours, and you're wondering as this young man, if you're going to receive a new heart, you're going to be able to live. And as he does, we want to draw out this parallel, this correlation between the actual physical heart that he receives and the spiritual heart that we believe people receive, a new transformed heart when they put their faith in Jesus. So our hope is that people hear Jesus makes their life better in this life and the next. And that's our prayer and hope.
I really appreciate, John, that you taking the time. I know it is an insanely busy time for you all as we're recording this, a week out from Christmas Day. Is there anything else you would want someone to hear just in a podcast about Christmas?
Yeah.
The relevance.
Yeah.
Why are we sitting here talking about it? Is there anything else you just want someone to take away from hearing from you?
Yeah, I would say, be kind to people in this season. So I think, I used this example earlier, but when you're at a coffee shop, when you're in a grocery store, when you're somewhere shopping, when you're out and about, the people you work with, just be kind to people. A lot of people are going through a lot. And I think in certain workplaces and experiences, we're more open to share that. In others, people keep it a little bit to themselves. And so be kind to one another in this time. People are stressed. They're busy. We're supposed to be the happiest time of year, Christmas and joy. But what I find when you have conversations with people are often stressed and they're busy and they're worried about money and they're worried about health and they have some issue with family that they're dealing with. So I'd say be kind to people. And if you are a Christ follower, if you are a Christian, if you're someone who's a part of a church in the Midwest or wherever you are, be kind to other churches too. I think our hope and our prayer is that other churches would partner with us, that we would be able to partner with them, that we'd feel like we're in this together because we are on the same team. We're trying to do what we can to reach people and to present the truth of his word. And if churches are trying to do that, we want to see that we're in the same team. So be kind to people. Hey, we're on the same team. And also just for us, at the end of the day, this is all about Jesus. What's Christmas about? Yeah, there's a lot of things that we fill in the blank with that. But if you're someone who doesn't have faith and you're someone who is wondering and you're someone who maybe used to but not sure, before anything else, just study the life of Jesus. Put aside the other things for now. Look to Jesus. Read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the Gospels. Read a book about Jesus. Just study the life of Jesus because I think culturally, he's about as relevant as ever. And so my prayer and hope is that people would look to Jesus this Christmas.
How can people get connected with you?
First of all, through Eagle Brook, we do have several locations throughout, one just even down the street from where we're recording here in downtown Minneapolis. So look up Eagle Brook Church, Instagram there. For me personally, John Alex 5, that's my Instagram, Facebook, all those things. And of course you can reach out through those. I try to be responsive to people and just more than anything, want to get to know other people. I have no agenda other than that. So
John, thank you so much for taking the time.
Of course. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Folks, I just want to say thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen to our new podcast, Bigger Than Belief. This has been such a heavy lift for so many people behind the scenes, working really hard to get these messages out there. And at the end of the day, what we're hoping to do is to take a layered concept like faith and belief and present it in a way that makes sense and is digestible and really through the people who believe and helps that we all understand each other just a little bit better. As a programming note, we are going to be taking next Thursday, which is New Year's Day, off. We will have no podcast releasing on January 1st, and we'll get right back to it on January 8th with one of the most fascinating guests I think that we have taped with. And that is going to be a really cool conversation coming up on the 8th. But in the meantime, we will see you in 2 weeks. Again, if you liked this show today, please rate us 5 stars. Honestly, it takes 2 seconds and it helps us a ton. Also, send today's episode to someone that you know if you feel like they could get something out of listening to it. Again, that helps us a ton. And as always, if you have someone that you want to see or something you want to hear about, just let us know. We're going to be tackling all kinds of topics, all kinds of stories, and all kinds of faiths in the weeks to come. See you guys then.